basically I will be leading this session. This webinar is being recorded, so after the webinar is done, essentially there will be a feedback message sent to you, and also a link to the webinar from a video download perspective, so if you want to go ahead and review that after that. Because we're getting a certain amount of people still joining in, swarming in right now, basically we're going to stop. We're going to put the session on hold for like around 2 minutes. Instead of starting exactly at 11 o'clock Eastern US, we will start at around 2 minutes after, and then we'll get going because we don't want to delay this too long from that point of view. The presentation slide material will be fairly short, not a lot of slide deck from that perspective, so we'll be spending more of our time looking at 10 top incidents that you can monitor and need to have visibility into, and how you do that with the use of the Netwrix Auditor platform. So with that, I'll go on silent right now. I'll mute myself for, say, like 2 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and start. There is a chat area and a question area that you'll be able to relay back to us, some feedback. Primarily, my feedback right now would be like, are you hearing me correctly and clearly? That would be important for me to know. Okay, so I'll go silent now for 2 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and start the session. Okay, we are at 2 minutes past the hour, so we'll go ahead and get ready to start this session. Again, my name is Roy Lopez, Sales Engineer from Netwrix, and the focus of this webinar will be the top 10 incidents in your Microsoft, primarily your Microsoft IT infrastructure that you need visibility into. So we'll go into those, and we'll show you, we'll use the Netwrix Auditor platform as a backdrop as to how you can see that and be aware of what's going on, both from a active visibility perspective and also a passive visibility perspective. So let's go ahead and get rolling here. So important to note that basically you can ask questions along the way. This is sort of a session that's really geared to serve your needs per se. And generally the way the webinar flows is that there's going to be a point where I switch into demo. And at the point that I switch into demo, I typically will ask to see like if there were any questions. So if you have any questions, you can start firing them off along the way. I'll try to answer things along the way, but if I don't, then at the point that I switch into demo, then I will focus on the questions received up to that point. And then we'll go into demonstration for this particular webinar. So that's the way that works. And the focus of the agenda here is basically we're going to establish the common reasons why you should be gaining visibility. Obviously, with different threats out there like malware and things like that, it becomes very important to understand how you can gain active visibility of situations or activities that are happening that are potentially affecting your security or compromising your systems from that point of view. We'll focus on what we consider to be at Netwrix the 10 most critical incidents and activities that you should have visibility into. Some of the challenges to get to that kind of visibility, especially if you're using native tools, and then a product demonstration of highlighting the 10 different areas, plus a couple of extra things that we can show with regards to that. insofar as the Netwrix auditor is concerned. The most recent release of the Netwrix auditor is what we'll be focused on. For those that don't know, that's version 9 from that perspective. Then we'll discuss a little bit about, introduce you a little bit more, familiarize you with Netwrix as a company, and then we'll have a question and answer period at the end, and then tail end from that point of view. So, major issues that customers need to, why they need to have visibility into their environment, and that's basically, nowadays is making sure that you're not subjected to data breaches, okay? Making sure that you know exactly what those privileged accounts are doing within the environment, but more important than that, to go ahead and see those accounts that basically suddenly have popped up into your environments, right? A lot of times I look at that as being locally authenticated users and their activities versus the activities that are being done by somebody, your personnel inside the environment. Although, as it's been noted by many threat profiles that are out there and surveys that have been done, that there's a certain amount of insider activity that's happening. Not to say that everybody with inside the environment is an evildoer per se, but maybe they don't know that they are actually performing certain activity, mainly because maybe their identity has been compromised, or maybe attached to their phone, their smartphone is some sort of entity that once they connect to their local PC inside of the environment, that entity gains access. So those are the kinds of things that you definitely want to be aware of. Obviously, you want to be adhere to, if you're subject to compliance, you want to be able to make sure that your organization is performing based upon the IT controls of those compliances, and you want to be able to quickly be able to review that, or especially if you have a compliance examiner suddenly pop in. And then you want to deal with the aspect that if you're sitting around trying to do this with what we call native tools, certain aspects of native tools will definitely work against you insofar as that's concerned, insofar as visibility, primarily because of too much data, too much noise data in those native tools, no concept insofar as historical reporting. So that would be very important to be able to gain visibility into the environment by using applications that are geared towards that. Now, in terms of the top 10 issues that incidents that you should be focusing in on, every compliance, every regulatory requirement from an Active Directory perspective is going to be very much interested in any security group changes, both at the security group permissioning level, which can affect many users, and then also at the individual who is being given access to certain security groups and hence certain privileges within the environment. Stale accounts, being able to understand what are the accounts that are no longer logging in, the inactive users within inside of your environment, being able to survey those on a periodic basis and then be able to address that, not just by way of PowerShell, but with applications that know how to actually start to secure those accounts and deprovision them automatically. So those are going to be very important for you. Anybody who is changing your group policies, specifically your group policies that affect logon requirements, complexity requirements and things like that, you need to be aware of who's manipulating group policies, because we use those a lot to go ahead and assist us in managing our environments per se. Being able to be aware of the logon activity of your users, whether or not that's logon activity on premises or logon activity inside the cloud or logon activity into, say, like sensitive environments like your databases per se. You want to be able to monitor that and be aware of that. And then, with all of these kinds of changes, all these kinds of incidents, you want to be able to have active visibility, not just be aware that after the fact, but maybe in near time, be aware that somebody had just did something. And that would be the use of an alerting functionality or feature set from that point of view. You want to be able to monitor your structured and unstructured data, and specifically your unstructured data to know exactly who has access to what And is anybody out there with more access than what they need? You need to have essentially software that can analyze, not just report who are the people who have permissions within your file systems, but more importantly, be able to analyze that data over time to see if those users are even using those permissions. Okay, that's extremely important because that helps you to reduce the vulnerability of your existing file system stores. Okay, specifically your shared drives, whether or not those shared drives are on Windows servers, on other NAS related platforms also. On the Exchange front, you want to be able to monitor what's going on inside of Exchange, but more importantly, you want to have a focus on what we call this non-owner mailbox access. In other words, if you're contemplating moving from Exchange on site to Exchange, say like online through say like either an MSP or through say like a Office 365, from that perspective, you want to be able to be assured that the people who are accessing those mailboxes are the people who are supposed to access them, number one, and if they've been granted permissions to access those mailboxes, what are they doing? In other words, if the CIO's mailbox is now going to be up in the cloud, you surely want to know who's doing what aside from the CIO in the CIO's mailbox or in any important officer of the company. So having that kind of visibility is also important. On your databases, because that's where, to a certain extent, that's where the companies keep the gold of the organization, the more important intellectual property, basically being able to monitor those databases for anytime that anybody's changing security in terms of access of those databases. In other words, for databases, we normally label those as grants. So anybody who's being granted permissions to specific critical databases, you probably would want to know about. You want to be able to focus in specifically on those areas that you have what we call business critical data. You know, just generic databases you probably don't care too much about. But that business critical data, you want to identify the location of that, whether or not that's on unstructured file servers, if that's on your database servers, if that's on SharePoint, okay, which is another view of structured data. You want to be able to know who's accessing that and who's potentially changing security in terms of those. In the terms of moving into the unstructured data for, say, like SharePoint, both on-premises and online, you want to be able to monitor that. You want to be able to monitor not only the people who are supposed to be checking in and checking out data insofar as those systems are concerned, but also anybody who's cursory doing reads of that data. Okay, that's extremely important because basically they don't, if they have read access, they can basically read the data and you would never know unless your system is capable of detecting read access from that point of view. So you want to be able to provide that specifically once you move up into the cloud insofar as being able to know what's going on to your data up there. Lastly, basically we are all involved in what we call Microsoft IT environments, and a lot of times we come to the concept of security from the perspective of Active Directory, and that's important. But it's also very important to note that when you're thinking about an environment, right, let's just say you have X amount of servers that are out there. A very small percentage of those servers are going to be Microsoft domain controllers, okay? And some of those nowadays are also read-only domain controllers. So no real changes are done there, but are used for logon authentication. But the vast majority of servers that you actually have out there in the market, in your environments, are going to be probably Windows servers, and they're probably going to be member servers within the environment. And those member servers, while they are existing inside of Active Directory, have no Active Directory that runs on them. On the contrary, they still have local users and groups, in other words, local SAM, security access management databases. That most member servers or standalone servers tend to have. So you want to be able to know who's changing security, any object, who's adding any users, who's changing privileges, elevating privileges in those environments. So then that way you can safeguard the environment. A lot of the, quote, hacking community that's out there basically is fully aware that most Microsoft shops are securing their domains, right? So the concept of a local user accessing Active Directory, that probably is never going to happen. But a local account, once it's been established on a Windows server within the environment, or maybe on a Windows workstation within that environment, it has a gateway into the environment. And then through the manipulation of privilege, privilege issues, which it also means that you should always stay on top of obviously your security patches from your OS vendors, but basically they can start to elevate their privileges and then suddenly start gaining even more access within the environment. So it's important to stop them at the gate, which is the local users and group changes from that point of view. And then, of course, because everybody's interested in privileged users and what the privileged users are doing, specifically those ones that you officially label as administrators, but you want to go ahead and monitor privileged user activity on your business critical data systems. And you really want to make sure that they're not necessarily doing something or giving away the store from that perspective, and you want to monitor that from that point of view. Now we're about to get ready to switch into a little bit more on demonstration. I see that one of the users out there, thank you, when it said the audio is working fine, as long as my tongue doesn't get twisted inside my own mouth. But basically, those are the 10 areas that we're going to primarily focus on. And at this point, we're going to be switching over to do more demonstration. So if you had any questions about those, or maybe you have some other areas that you want to maybe bring to my attention, feel free to do so in the form of a question or a comment in the chat. But for right now, I'll switch. So let me grab my switching thing here and switch to console number 2. Move this out of the way. So this is the Netwrix Auditor. It is a Windows-based application that gets installed on preferably a member server within an environment. It can be installed also on a workstation OS. It does come available not only in a software distribution, but also as an appliance, a VMware appliance or Hyper-V appliance. So if you're in this session and you're from Australia, where Hyper-V is the predominant virtualization system, then we will be able to support you with the VM from that perspective. Very important from before I break into the actual 10, important that within the Netwrix Auditor, once you come into the Netwrix Auditor, there are 3 reports here that from a security perspective, you should definitely look at. One is going to be the Enterprise Overview. And the Enterprise Overview is an overview for all the applications that you have deployed, what we call the data sources nowadays in Netwrix Auditor. For those that have prior experience with Netwrix Auditor, version 9, some terms have changed. One of the 2 terms that have changed have been the concept of a managed object is now a monitoring plan. The concept of an audited system is now a data source. Okay, so like in this case, the reason why I would do this from a security and an incident perspective is I'm looking to see if there's anybody who has the most changes that I'm not used to seeing. Okay, I'm looking to see if there are any servers where there are a lot of changes that are occurring and that I haven't seen that many changes before. So if I suddenly see this huge spike, I might want to click on that and drill down to see exactly who is performing those changes within the system. And then this will go ahead and invoke a reporting services report that will show me exactly what those changes were. Quickly, hopefully. There it goes. And then I can see exactly the changes. Now, important note to self insofar as these changes are concerned, specifically as to file servers, there are some new enhancements here. We're seeing the process, the application that the user was using when they start to change something or they try to modify or add or remove. So basically we can see that. That gives us more granularity. What we're also going to be able to see, I don't see it on this one, but we'll see it in other reports, we'll start to see workstation information. We'll start to see things like adds, removes, modifies, which is what we've always been able to see, but we'll also be able to see things like moves, renames, and copies too. So you, in every Netwrix report, you're going to have what we call the 4 W's of auditing. And unlike what my competitors or my alternatives might say, because there is no competition, basically, essentially, we have a filter panel that allows you to then focus in on data that's more interesting to you, more action-oriented data from your perspective, okay? So this is a report to try to give you the high-level data of what's going on inside your environment for the systems that you have deployed with Netwrix Auditor. And then inside of here, you have the changes by date, the systems where the most changes have been happening, the changes by data source, blue being in this case file server, this one being SQL Server, this one being Windows Server. If I click on the SQL Server one, basically it will just quickly drill me down into that data point. I think somebody's asking a question here, or is there a chat message coming across? Put your questions to the questions box. Any feedback appreciated. Okay, I'm seeing that's more internal people. So here, basically, we can start to see, what was going on the SQL Server. But that's, to give you a quick view of the data that's happening and the changes that are happening in the environment. Also, of top of mind perspective, the failed activity that's happening within the environment. You would definitely want to be aware of that, because this tells you somebody was trying to do something which is not just a failed logon, but failed read attempts, failed modification attempts, failed actions. And then I can click over here and see exactly what was the attempts that this person was trying to do. Okay, this is very important because basically then right on top of mind perspective that somebody is trying to do something that they don't have rights to do. Okay, so this person was trying to read something off of a particular file server and they didn't have rights to read that, failed attempt. Okay, so that definitely talks to behavior. And then the other one that's a very good one from a top of mind point of view is activity outside of business hours. So some of you might be working in environments where you're 24/7, 3 shifts and things like that, so that it doesn't have as much applicability, but you can then target these reports based upon those shift time frames by subscribing to the report and then being able to say, what is the period in which you want to, see this kind of data by selecting it here. So inside of the report, basically it's telling me these are the people who are performing activity outside of business hours. And if I see somebody like Anton Takish, then I can go ahead and click on that and say, who was that person? And what was he doing inside of our system? And then what this is going to tell me is going to tell me where within the system, what are the monitored or the data sources that he was actually performing changes in. In this case, he was actually inside of a particular area reading information out of Exchange Online. And we have the workstation from where he initiates that change, the application that he used. And the important thing about this is that with a single pane of glass, you can see all the changes, no matter if they're on premises or if they're inside of the cloud. And then if I come over here and I look at this user SQ301 Carla, and I say, I have a D domain. I don't have any SQ301 domain. That's a server that I have. What was this user doing? Then this user was reading files on my file server at 12 midnight. So this user is a local user because we can tell that because of the SQ301, and the where in the who, what, when, where is telling us that that is the server. So this is a local user on a file server that's reading files on that file server at essentially midnight. This potentially is telling me that this is a data breach user. Okay? Because a lot of times most customers, when they see this and we talk to them about their file servers, they'll say, no way, Jose, will I ever have a local user going ahead and accessing my file systems. Well, if that's the case, then let's calling a squirrel, that's exactly the activity you want to create an alert for. For instance, if I notice that somebody is a local user accessing my system, I can create an alert and we start to receive an alert that looks like this. that basically this is active visibility. So it's telling me that a particular user on a particular date and time, they went ahead and they did a copy of a file. They copied the file to this location. They did this on this server. They initiated it from this particular workstation. So I know that somebody is performing activity like that, and I can start tracking that. I can start having active visibility to be able to see that. But in general, this is the way the Netwrix order will start to help you within your environment to track what's going on, and from a top of mind perspective, immediate value to the organization. Okay? So let's go ahead and focus now on how the Netwrix auditor for the 10 top critical things that you should be looking at aside from what I just pointed out, which I think is extremely important. So we come into the reports area, and we'll be looking, say, like for reports in terms of like group memberships. So if we want to find a report like that, then you look inside the folder that corresponds to the data source or the application package in our case, and I would be looking, say, like for changes, and I would be coming down through here and I would be looking for security group membership changes. So I double click on my security group membership changes. If there were changes done today, I will see that. If they weren't, then basically I say like, let's look at the previous quarter and see any security group membership changes that have been done. I do that specifically because there are some alternatives that are out there that are limited to only the last 30 days. Netwrix order is not limited to the last 30 days. We can show you data going much further than that. In my environment, basically, these are all the security group membership changes that have been done during this year. And always you're going to find what we call the who, what, when, where. Those are the 4 W's of auditing, or for those that speak Spanish, that would be a quién, a qué cambiaron, qué se cambió, which is the what, and cuándo lo cambiaron insofar as the when is concerned. So basically, because I do demos in Spanish also. So in this case here, we see exactly who's gone ahead and made the change. And the who in the who, what, when, where metaphor is basically the actor of a change. So this is the person who adds a particular group into the environment, or a particular member. They added the Exchange servers user or the group into this particular Windows authorization database group, and they did that at this particular date and time. So we have the information of what's going on inside of Active Directory insofar as security group membership changes. Important to note that Active Directory also, when we collect the data from Active Directory, will also produce an email, of what we call a daily change summary email, that looks like this. And this will tell you, summarize all the activities, adds, removes, and modifications for any object type inside of Active Directory, and then tell you exactly who did that, the workstation from where they initiate that change, and then the actual details. And by the way, if you can't put up a SQL server on the back end of Netwrix Auditor, you can get this by way of SMTP communications. So if you have an email server internally, or you have Office 365, or you have an MSP email server, then as long as you can send SMTP messages, you can get a message like this. Now what you can also get in terms of like, say like Active Directory, specifically with security group membership changes, you can come over here and you can go to the alert area. Now the alerts are basically, there's an alert library that ships with the software. It's like 30 different alerts. One of the alerts that's in there that's applicable to what we're talking about right now is called the group membership changes. In this case here, you would turn on the alert. You would add your recipient. You would say, I'm going to send them either email and or SMS text. And yes, for those that are curious, yes, at some point in time, you may also, as we evolve the platform, see an action capability appear inside of there. But basically today, you would go ahead and set up the recipient. By the way, you always want to add a recipient, because I also have the alert to nowhere. And then you review the filters. Filters are based upon searches. And the way the logic works is, if the data source equals Active Directory and the object type equals group and the action equals modified and details contains member and the what contains enterprise admins, or essentially when they're the same, they are ORed. When they're different, they're ANDed together. That's your logic processing. And unlike in the previous iterations of Netwrix Auditor, the alerting capability now has threshold capability. So you can limit the threshold based upon different parameters. So if I leave it to who, if the same person goes ahead and does so many actions within, say, 10 minutes, then that qualifies for an alert threshold. Okay? That's the way that would work. Let me get out of this, and let me get back into the Netwrix Auditor. Important note to self, the Netwrix Auditor is also what we call reentrant. So if I go ahead and come down here and right mouse click and click on it again, then basically it will run again. And then I'll have 2 copies of Netwrix Auditor operational. Okay? This is important for you to note, especially insofar as visibility. If you are in a corporate kind of environment where you have like security officers and things like that, compliance officers, you can basically roll out the Netwrix Auditor to their desktop, and then they too can perform their own searches or look for what's going on inside of the environment through the different reporting capabilities, provided that you have actually given them reviewer status. And I say that because Netwrix Auditor version 9 now has role-based access controls that's done at the what we call the monitoring plan level. So if the user has a reviewer for, say, like a global reviewer, then they can see everything that's happening across all systems. Or if they are specific to a specific area, then let me just back out of here. Come out of here. They can come into the reporting area where they have privileges to, and they say, like, if they're, say, like Exchange Online, they can go ahead and see all the Exchange Online changes that have been happening since yesterday and today by default. Okay? If they're not a reviewer of a monitoring plan, then they can't see squat. I'll also set this for this month so you can definitely see that there's real data there. Okay, so there you go. So now let's get out of here. So being able to accomplish, being able to see group memberships, that's something that you can do. You can also see, say, like if there are issues that are happening insofar as password policies are concerned. I will come in here to the reports area, and I can come easily through the Active Directory, go into group policy changes, and then see group policy changes that are dealing with account policies or password policy changes that way. If I go ahead and double click on, say, password policy changes, if nothing has occurred between yesterday and today, I can easily come in here and say, like, how about during this year, have we had any password policy changes? Again, this is to exemplify the point that we can have a look back much greater than, say, like 30 days. And then basically we can see exactly who made the password policy change. We can see exactly what was the nature of the change. We can see if they added that, this is what they added. If they modified it, then we can see what was the policy, and then what were the previous values that were there, and what's the current value that's being set. So this is the way I can see what's going on in password policy changes. But let's just say you're in the middle of a discussion and suddenly you get a knock on your door. Hopefully you have a door that they can knock on. And it's a compliance officer. And maybe you're from the European sector, or you're doing business with European customers, and you need to be able to go ahead and deal with this compliance officer who wants to find out how you're set up for, say, like account policies, for controlling how users go ahead and log on to the environment. Then basically you can come in here and double click on the account policies report and then see exactly how you're set up and expose that to the examiner. Unlike you folks out there, I would probably get dinged because I've disabled the complexity requirement. Okay, they'll probably say no good in terms of that. But basically I can easily show them this kind of data. This is what we generally call in Netwrix state and time data. Or I could come in here and go to account policies and say, like, okay, I can show you exactly all the account policies that have been changed. I can look at that either by a certain time frame like that, or I can say I just want to see it for this year, and then go ahead and rerun the report, and then I can have it all laid out. So I know they know exactly how I'm monitoring account policy changes, password policy changes, or any account policy change, because those are GPOs, and our Active Directory capability allows us to see what's going on insofar as those GPOs are concerned. Now, one thing that's very important to point out, because sometimes there are people who have alternatives, but like say like if you have a SIEM application, when Netwrix Auditor is looking at policy changes, group policy changes, we look at everything that's happening in the security event log. We also look at everything that's happening inside a sysvol. Some applications that are out there don't have that. For instance, Microsoft System Center Operations Manager doesn't show you the actual settings that they change. And then we also look at the information that's being changed in the Active Directory. And then we also have information that's called the previous value. We have that because we have a two-tier storage model, and that gives us that capability. So in this case here, you also have the workstation from where they went ahead and performed said change. So that will help you with that insofar as password policy changes. When you're looking for the third part of this equation, which has to do more with the let's see here, that's the Exchange configuration changes. You would come into Exchange, and you have all these reports available for Exchange, and then you can say, I want to see Exchange server changes. And then this will give us our Exchange server changes, and I'll go ahead and just say, let's look at the ones that have happened during this year, and then I'll have all the data insofar as Exchange server changes for the different types of attributes inside or object types within inside of Exchange. So I have complete visibility insofar as Exchange on premises, and then when I want to look at this from say like an Exchange Online perspective, I can come out of here and come into here for Exchange Online and look at all Exchange Online changes, and then look at it for say like the same time period, and then I would have all the Exchange Online changes also. Important note to self. Any kind of activity that Netwrix Auditor can see insofar as changes are concerned, they can also be seen insofar as searches are concerned. So if I come into here and go into a search and go into advanced mode and say I'm interested in say like data source equals say Exchange, then I can go ahead and do a search and I can see them. And then within here, if I notice a change that if somebody removes a group, and I may want to know about that sooner than later, I may want to see a little bit more information. In this case here, I see the workstation where they initiate the change from. In this case, the domain controller where the change actually took effect, which is one of the reasons why with Exchange you need to have Active Directory visibility and also Exchange, because Exchange is a hybrid application. And then if I want to go ahead and focus in on that, I can include that as a search and say search like this, and then anybody who does any Exchange changes insofar as Exchange Windows permissions, I can then go ahead and morph that out and either save that as a search that I can repeat, or I can easily create an alert on that. So that's another capability of our system. By the way, for those that have historical understanding of Netwrix Auditor, Netwrix Auditor from once we went to version 9, the concept of alerting became a service of the platform, which is why all the applications now have this ability to have alerting, as compared to in the older days when it was only a more application specific at that point in time. So let me go ahead and continue on. So let's see here. The next one on the list is mailbox access by non-owners. So not just being able to see what's going on in Exchange, but also being able to see if somebody's doing what we call a non-owner mailbox access. So I can come into here to the reports area, and I can come into say like Exchange, and then run the Exchange overview, Exchange server overview. And then basically this is a graphical report that will be broken up in quadrants. Nothing has changed between yesterday and today. I can say for the previous quarter, I want to see if there's been any Exchange activity. And then here basically I see all the activity that has been happening insofar as Exchange is concerned. If I want to click on this high point over here, I can then go ahead and perform a drill down into that activity to know specifically what was going on at that particular date and time. And I have all the information laid out like that very easily in front of me. I have the workstation information from where they initiate the change from, either the IP address or the workstation data, and I have all the details insofar as what the changes were. So I have that way. When I want to look at this from, say, like a non-owner mailbox perspective, I do have a report here. I don't have a lot of data collected locally for on-premises, so I'll show that more with Exchange Online. I can come over here and say I want to look at any non-owner access information, and I can see that information here. I also have that for Exchange Online, which is essentially Office 365, with the Office 365 overview report. And I'll go ahead and increase my time frame here so we can see this. I'll see this like this and go like that. And then now I can see the people who have the most access to other people's mailboxes. I can see this guy Anton have that. I can see this guy named Roy Lopez has that. I can click on that and then see exactly what was that user accessing. Whose mailbox? I was accessing Elizabeth's mailbox, and basically these are the different types of activities that I performed while I was accessing that mailbox. By the way, if Elizabeth, who happens to be the financial director, actually goes ahead and wants to get an email to show her all the people who access her mailbox, then basically I can do that and send her an email accordingly. And that's automatic in the system from that point of view. So this way now I can see everything that's happening across the board on, say, like Exchange, whether or not Exchange is on premises or Exchange is online. And inclusive with that, and I'll cut to the chase on that, I'll come over here and say, like, what are the people doing in terms of, like, SharePoint. So I can click over here and I can see exactly what people are doing on SharePoint also. So I have complete visibility of what's going on in the environment insofar as, you know, SharePoint, Exchange Online, group policies, and also Active Directory changes, specifically with group memberships from that point of view. And I can see also group changes that are happening on SharePoint from that perspective too. So I'll go ahead and break back here and get back into the flow of things. So now, the next one up would be in terms of file servers. So when I want to look at file servers, basically I have file server reporting inside of here, but I also have the ability through what we call alerting to be able to alert on file server changes. Like for instance, in this list, one of the default alerts that's inside of here is file server permission changes. Now this particular filter, when you first enable this filter, I would suggest that you change something about this. If I come in here and I set this the way it looks like originally, it's going to look like this. And some people have actually wondered why we're not seeing certain permission changes on file servers. And the reason for that would be that the share is looking at the share level. It's not looking at the individual folders and files underneath those shares. So if you want this filter to go ahead and be more reflective on any file permission changes across the board, you can either come in here and you can start dialing them in one at a time by saying file, folder, and or share, putting them individually, or you can do like I do and basically remove that. Now at that point, it's going to look for any permission changes on any file, folder, and or share. Okay, so that's my tip insofar as that's concerned. And then you can, you can easily come in here and say this is not just file share, but file system permission changes. Okay, and then that will become much more useful from that point of view. And then basically when you come into, say, like the alerting area, you're going to find that all the alerts are going to be off. There are going to be 30 of them that are going to be there. And I would suggest avoid doing this, because by doing that, you just create the alert to nowhere. So that's not good. I would go ahead and do the following. I would come in here if there's an alert that, that you're curious about. I would investigate it by the filters and see what exactly is it trying to do. In this case, you would need to add a user because basically this is to perform a forensic review. And then that back here, basically you have the recipients and thresholds depending upon what you want to set up from that point of view. So the alerts are going to be there to help you insofar as any file system access. I have an alert that I showed you earlier, which was this alert for, say, like if somebody is a non-domain user. I want to show you how that alert is actually created. So if I come up down here, and again, this is an alert that sometimes people don't even think about, okay? But this is something that you should probably enable. And the filter is real simple. Basically what you're doing is, say like you have a domain, right? And everybody's supposed to log in from the domain and to be able to access anything. Well, if anybody does not logs on and it does not contain your domain preface, then basically that's a local user. Okay, because there's no other magic they can perform to log on. You're either domain or local. And if they're a local user logging onto your file servers or to any other system other than Active Directory, because you can't log into Active Directory as a local user, then basically you would want to go ahead and track that. And that's an alert you want to turn on. Okay, because especially if that activity is at 3 o'clock in the morning, you probably just stumbled across the data breach user. Okay, let me go ahead and continue on. Hopefully the session is informative from that point of view. And let me make sure that I'm showing what I think I'm showing. Yeah, the audience view is correct. Okay, so now let's see, moving forward here in terms of like file servers, specifically on file servers, you have an activity report insofar as file servers are concerned. You can come down here. These are all the reports you have for file servers. And I would also click on, I would definitely subscribe to this particular report, because basically what it's telling you is this is a summary of all the activities that are being performed by different users within inside of your environment. Now, if there's a server object or local users, insofar as that's concerned, you probably don't are concerned about that. By the way, there is an omit capability that you can do. That's described in the administration guide and an appendix in the administration guide. But if you see like a user who's a local user, you definitely want to go ahead and click on that user and find out exactly what are they doing. Okay. Again, if it's a local user, there's probably a problem with regards to that user is concerned accessing your file systems from that perspective. I'll just cancel that so we can just quickly move forward. Okay, moving forward then, we want to look at SharePoint. Let's go ahead and step out of here. And again, for any top point, basically you're going to have the folder that's related to the application package is concerned, and obviously you have to have the application package installed and configured, so then that way you can start to collect this kind of data and be able to see it. I can go ahead and come into SharePoint activity. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and back out of this one for SharePoint. Oh, okay. I probably haven't created another monitoring plan. Let me just look at it from a SharePoint online perspective then. And let's expand our time frame. Say this year. And we can see all the activity that somebody does on SharePoint. So, you can hide, but basically we know exactly the workstation where you initiate a change from, the server that you connected to in terms of SharePoint. This was SharePoint Online instead of SharePoint on premises. And then what did you do? Did you add? Did you modify? Did you delete? Did you were you just reading files inside of the system? If you want to see if they were doing any just reads, you can deselect this and just select reads. And as long as you've configured for reads, then you would be able to see reads happening within the system. And then you can know exactly who is the user. Now, this is a SharePoint Online system, and I had a really weird user who was reading stuff on my SharePoint Online. Somebody told me that sounds like it's one of the game machines from Microsoft, a user ID like that. But basically, that's probably not too cool because if somebody's reading your files on your system and you have business critical data up on SharePoint Online, well, that's definitely a problem. Now, in this case here, if you know that this is potentially a preface that might be used as a part of a logon, then you can then go ahead and create an alert, okay, for that kind of a change, because anything that you can see insofar as a change report, as I stated before, you can also see that in the search from that perspective. So if I come back here into search and I say over here, I want to look for a who, where the who contains something called anon, like that, and then I can go ahead and do a search, and it's going to go wander across all my databases. If I don't want to wander too long, then basically I can also set the data source. But then I can see that. And then once you see something like that, some kind of activity like that, you might go ahead and say, I want to go ahead and create an alert. Okay? And as simple as that is how you can create alerts for things that you see outside from the library of alerts that we already have within the application package. Moving forward, aside from SharePoint, then we want to be able to see those Active Directory Windows servers and their member servers within the environment. Again, within our system, you would be creating what we call a monitoring plan to be able to do that. You'd have your monitoring plan so that you can go ahead and start collecting the data from that point of view. By the way, Netwrix Auditor is primarily agentless. I say primarily because they're for SharePoint Online, no, for SharePoint on site. It requires an agent for that. And the other one that's called User Video Activity, which I'll show you shortly, also requires an agent for that. Aside from those two, we're non-invasive from your environments are concerned. We basically leverage the policies from that point of view. In this case here, once I have let's see, in this case, the Windows Server, I would come in here to the, let's see, Windows Servers, and then I can come down into double click on Windows Servers, and then in Windows Servers I have the servers that I'm monitoring, and then I can come over here and I can do a search. And when you do a search through this way, it basically is based on what we call the monitoring plan. And as long as you have reviewer access, you can see this data. But you can be what we call designated a configurator, a person who can configure the system, but can't actually see the data because you're not a reviewer. Okay, so that's the way we can deal with that. Now I can come into here and I can say that the object type that I'm interested in it has to do with something with like the user. And then I go ahead and do a search, and if any changes like that have happened with users, then I would be able to see that. If I want to just say contains, I probably can get a little bit more information from the searching capability. And then I can see these are local users that are being added and or removed from the system, or privileges are being granted to them. So I can know exactly what's going on my member servers from a security perspective. So get out of there, come back home, and then let's see here. Then we also have SQL Server. So we can come in here to reports, and we can say I want to go to SQL Server. These are all the different types of reports. I can just quickly come in here and say I want to see all SQL Server activity that's happening in the environment, and then I know exactly what are the different changes that are being done on my SQL Server and the persons who are making those changes within the environment per se. This is the most recent data, so if I wanted to look at previous data, I'll say previous quarter over here and just sort of rerun that. And then I know exactly, so if I say like, ooh, the SA user was doing a lot of changes. So I can come over here and say like, okay, I can grab that, copy, and then place that into the who, and just paste it and say, okay, so we'll limit my view to just what the SA user was doing. And now I have all the changes that were being done by the SA user. SA, for those that don't know, from a SQL Server perspective, those are your SQL Server users, your administrator user from that point of view. And then the other areas here, user log on, log off activity. I'll come into Active Directory. That's log on activity here. If you don't have version 8 or version 8.5, you won't have log on activity as part of your Active Directory. But now with the most recent releases, we have the log on activity as a feature of the of what's going on in your environment. And then not only do you have log on activity this way, if I go ahead and come over here and spin up my second copy, if I go to the alerts, there are going to be alerts inside of here. So if somebody enables an account, if somebody goes ahead and is failing to log on to the environment, we'll see that. If somebody logs on with, say, like a disabled account, let me just go ahead and just quickly come over here and just show you that. Then if somebody logs on with a disabled account, we're going to know when did they do that, who was the person, what was the workstation they logged in from, and then what was the domain controller that said, no, I don't think so. And then basically you would get that in near time. So in general, you're going to be able to see everything that's going on insofar as your Active Directory is concerned, and then not only can you see it insofar as reporting and or alerting, but you can actually visually see it. If I come down here to, say, like a Windows Server, I can come to user activity and run user activity, and this is a feature of the Netwrix order for Windows Server application package, and then with that one, then I can see what the person was actually doing. And by the way, I run this on my desktop on my demo system to just bring forward that the level of impact on the system is very minimal, and basically the users actually don't even know that you're doing this from that perspective. I know there's some concerns with some people in terms of privacy and all that, but as I direct you to read your own employment agreement, which usually says that you can monitor the users from that point of view. So I'll go ahead and get out of this one. And, oh, I dropped out too far. Give me a second. Let me come back here and repost that. Okay, here we go. So let me go ahead and exit out of this one. I want to, I want to exit that there and get out of here. No, I don't want to do that. Surely don't want to do that. Don't want to suspend my systems. Let me get out of there. There we go. So put this back into full view. So you can see the data this way. And then you can also actually, with that, you'll have the ability to see what the administrators are doing. By the way, that's a really good application to deploy out to business critical data servers from that point of view. Well, those are the ways in which Netwrix Order can help you with 10 critical issues and incidents that you should have visibility to. You can see that you have a lot of visibility from that perspective. And I'm going to go ahead and switch us back into the presentation so we can tail in out of this session from that point of view. So let me just switch my screen here. So Netwrix Auditor, what is it? It's a platform for visibility into the user behavior and also risk mitigation. It enables you to have views over changes, configurations, and also access, who has access to what within a hybrid IT cloud environment. Both you can be just on site, on premises, in the cloud, completely, or any combination thereof. It provides the security analytics of the who, what, when, where to help you to detect anomalies and investigate threat patterns before an actual data breach occurs. The application or the platform is laid out as follows. These white boxes are ways in which you can purchase into the application platform. And these are all the different areas of focus that we have within the application platform. So Active Directory, group policies, Exchange, and all that. This is the way you can do that. Now, in the Netwrix Auditor, basically we have a conceptual model that dictates how we collect data. So when we're collecting data, like when you saw the group policy data, we are collecting data for all the permissions changes and access, but we're doing that by looking at the security event logs, the sysvols, the admin logs on Exchange, and so on, and Active Directory to give you a complete view of what's going on within the environment. That's what we call audit assurance. And then audit archive is how we retain your data for as long as we need to keep it, typically as dictated by long-term data retention of compliance. And then we go ahead, and the way we show you or present the data is we have alerts. We also have interactive searching or discovery, and we have our predefined reports which have filters on them. We have dashboards to give you that information in a graphical perspective, and then you can either run the reports or you can subscribe to the reports from that perspective. And then you have, through role-based access control, you can grant the people permissions, reviewer permissions to the data that they need to see and nothing else. Netwrix as a corporation has been around since 2006. Since that time, we are a US-based software development firm that is based out of Irvine, California, and we have over 8,000 customers worldwide. We do provide technical support for our products. Our main product that we have is basically the Netwrix Auditor platform, and we do that on a regular basis and have a high level of satisfaction. We're recognized within the U.S. as being one of the fastest growing software companies, I believe, for the last 3 or 4 years in a row, and we've garnered in many, many awards. As a U.S.-based, we have multiple customers. The extent of the reach of our software is across multiple business environments from that perspective. And the main thing here is that all these different companies can leverage the Netwrix Auditor to meet their needs, both from a compliance and a security perspective. These are various awards that we have gained over time. And as a US-based software development firm, the fact that, we have gained awards, say, like from say Homeland Security in the U.S. and or as I move over here, 2 years in a row, essentially, Homeland Security Awards and Cybersecurity Awards, it really means that Netwrix Auditor is in touch with the needs of customers out there in the marketplace today. So going forward, these are, when you're thinking about what you're going to do with this information that you have received and what you have seen, basically you have a couple of steps there. You can either go for a free trial. We do offer a 20-day free trial for all of our software. You do have to sign up for a customer portal report to be able to access the data. You can download then the appliance, a virtual appliance for either Hyper-V or VMware. We do have Netwrix Auditor available in the cloud, and we also have add-ons available. These add-ons are basically free sample scripts that will take advantage of what we call the REST API to allow you to go ahead and integrate Netwrix Auditor not just by itself, but also with other systems like Cisco and so on. And then you have other webinars, and you can have other live demos if you want to request a live demo from that point of view by SEs like myself. And that's it for today. So I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. I'll see if there were any questions whatsoever.